This class is about faith. We'll start with on the student book. Before we get to this photo on the screen, let's pull up over here the student book overview. So some of you have the printed version, but we'll start with Layla. If you can read over here by faith overview.
Yeah. Overview. We believe in God at our core, but just as a skill must be consistently practiced and honed, faith is an action that needs to continuously be exercised and updated. Being faithful also requires commitment to the truth, even when we are tempted to do otherwise. When godliness is hidden, so we can make our own choices.
Great. So this is 3 points that we'll be discussing in the class. But just to hear, Elia, what would you say to define faith? What does the word faith mean? Give us a short answer.
I think faith is just like it kind of relates to like hope or like believing in something. Well, it's not really believing in some like necessarily, but it's like, I guess just hope that there's something greater than you and that you're not as much in control and like everything's going to be okay.
Yeah, no, very good. To summarize, when we say faith in God, means the belief that there's a creator that controls the world and that everything is in his power. We can say there's someone created the world, he left, he took a vacation, he doesn't want to bother himself with the intricate details of all our petty fights, and therefore he backs off and he says, guys, figure it out on your own. Make the best of it. Faith is believing that there is a God, that it is in control of the world, and does not take away from our free choice, which we'll get to later on. That's not about this class, but that God is in control and following his commandments, which means I could know that someone exists, but not be interested in following them. Faith is when someone says, because God exists, I want to do what he says I should do. And besides, we have the additional point which we mentioned, which is even when it's hard, we have to commit to something that's difficult. And even when we don't see godliness, that's what we want to do. Moving on to the key points. Gabe, if you could read for us the key points we'll be discussing in this class.
All right, sure. Muna is not just something you feel, it is something you actively do. Faith must be internalized, nurtured, and fostered. Having faith also means being faithful and committed unto the truth. God concealed himself in order for creation to exist. If God's existence was felt everywhere, there would be no room for existence.
Very good. So these are points. Each one is a handful, which we'll get through, but this is just to give you an overview of what we will discuss, and we'll explain each one of these points. So by the end of this class, you should be more clear on each one of these key points, which we'll get back to. So let's start with introduction. When we start with faith, let's have someone read it. So Sheila, if you'd like to read these questions on the introduction, you'll see on your screen. What if? So you're on mute. 1 second. Let me ask to unmute. Yep. No, I think you're still on mute. You're still on mute. Oh, now you're on. Yep.
Hello?
Yeah, now I can hear you. Okay, so read that out loud, the introduction.
What if I'm not just feeling faith in God? If faith a binary feeling, something you either have or do not have? Can you fake faith? Is faith and religion just a safety net for people so they don't have to make their own thoughtful decisions and take responsibility?
So these are fully loaded questions. If faith means I believe in God, now what happens if I don't believe in God? Is it something that either you do have or you don't have? And if I don't have it, then I just live with it. Some people are born beautiful, some people are not. Some people are born wealthy, some are not. There's nothing you can do about it. Is faith that type of belief system where either you grew up in an environment where you believe in God, and if you don't, then you just live with it? Or do I say that faith is something deeper, something that we can actually create and nurture and build up inside of ourselves? So has anyone over here ever studied any type of martial arts? Krav Maga, karate? Oh, Gabe. Oh, Leila? Okay, Leila also studied it. Now, if you were to tell me what are they teaching you when you do any type of martial arts, either one of you can answer, why do they keep practicing things again and again? Why can't they tell you once what to do and say, there we go, you know what to do in a situation where you feel threatened?
Because you have to practice in order to learn how to do it. You can't just be told, you have to actually do it in order to know how to.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And to clarify a little bit more, I'll use a simple example. If someone were to come over to you and grab you by the neck and start choking you, what's the natural response everybody would do? Most people would grab the person's arms and try to remove it from their neck because they're feeling attacked. Now, if you study, for example, Krav Maga, they'll say that's the incorrect response, because when you're grabbing someone's arms trying to pull it off, they have a stronger grip around you than you'll be having around their arms to pull it off. It's a lot harder to take off someone's arm when they have a great grip around you. Instead, Krav Maga is trying to train you to do the correct response, which is attack them in a place where they'll have to let go of you. Attack them in a soft spot, which will force them to let go. But they don't just tell it to you once. They have you train again and again and again to do it, because naturally we are wired a certain way where our first instincts kick in. As soon as we're attacked, we don't think straight. We do the wrong response. If we want to do the right response, we got to keep on working on it. You got to train your muscles. You got to make sure that you're developing it, that this becomes the quick and natural response that you do if you want to be successful. Faith in God is not just, I believe in God. If you ask me, I believe, but it doesn't interact. It doesn't change my day-to-day life. That type of faith is not accomplishing what it should be accomplishing. You're not fully using it. You're not developing that skill. That is leaving it on the back shelf and saying, yes, that's the type of person I am, but it doesn't change my day-to-day life. We'll get to that a little more momentarily, but let me ask you a question. If faith in God is a commandment, God says, believe in me, how could God command us to believe in him? We'll use this as an example. Sterni, do you believe in aliens?
I've heard about it. I've never seen one. So It's kind of, I never know.
Yeah, if you ask the average person, do you believe in extraterrestrial beings or life outside of our planet? Some will say yes, some will say no. What's the reasoning? Some will say, well, I never saw it. Others will say, well, others have experienced it. If I tell you that if you don't believe in aliens, you should, because aliens said you should believe in them. The aliens told me that everybody must believe in them. Would you take that as an argument, Sterni, to change your mind and say, well, if the aliens said, then I must believe in them?
I wouldn't completely believe. I would maybe doubt it.
You would say, well, if I don't believe that they exist in the first place, telling me that they told me to believe in them wouldn't change my mind, because I say that that's also baloney. It's all part of the same concoction that you made up. They don't exist, and their commandments don't exist. Now, I'm not here to say if they do exist or not. I'm using this as an example. How can we say that God tells us, believe in me? And here you have the question on your screen. God says, believe that there's one God. Can God command you to believe in God? If I never knew that God existed, and I doubt if he does or not, don't come and tell me God told me you should believe in me. Well, maybe God never existed in the first place to even say that. So how could you say that there's a commandment to believe in God? Let's read it inside in our sources. And Layla, if you'd like to read it over here, first start with the first mitzvah, and then read the following paragraph.
The first mitzvah, belief, emunah, is the first of the 10 commandments and is listed by Maimonides as the first of all the 613 commandments. Faith is commanded, Maimonides' Book of Commandments. The first commandment, which we are commanded to do, is believe in God, that we should believe that there is a cause to all of existence, and that is the meaning of what the Torah says, I am the Lord your God.
So the first commandment Maimonides tells us is believing that God exists. And now the question is, how could God tell us to believe? I don't believe that God exists to even tell me that I should believe in him. So where do we start from if this is a commandment? Must be, if this is a commandment, that there is a additional aspect of belief in God, of faith in God, that he exists and that he commands us beyond just knowing that he exists. Meaning we have to come with the assumption that we know that God exists, and God is telling you, even after you know that I exist, I want you to hone that skill. I want you to really work hard and make that a part of your life. Make that something that actually can be seen in your day-to-day actions. Because we could believe that God exists, but yet it doesn't change from the way we behave. How many of you have ideas of ways you want to behave, things that you want to do? You want to go on a certain diet, you want to study certain books, and we yet just don't get around to doing it. That's because not everything we know is true do we actually do. There are things that we don't want to do, we think it's bad, but yet we still go ahead and we do it. That's because you didn't nurture, you didn't make that belief that you have into a day-to-day involvement in your life where you start behaving a certain way because of the way you think. A lot of us don't want to procrastinate, but we do procrastinate. The answer for that is because I know that I shouldn't, but it's very easy to do it, and it's not yet a part of who I am in order for me to stop doing it. We'll give you an example. We'll start off with this video over here. Let me pull this up on the screen. This is a short clip. We'll watch this clip together.
Surveillance video shows this man saying a prayer, making the sign of the cross before a smash and grab at a clothing store in Gravesend, Brooklyn. This video shows him grab a large brick, which he throws at the front door of Ziani on Avenue U twice, smashing the glass, then forcing his way in. Oh my gosh. We showed the video to some customers who say the man is going to need a lot more than a prayer when police find him.
I make of this that he went and he was praying to God and said, please forgive me for what I'm going to do.
Praying that he could get in there and get out quick without anybody seeing him, but that's really foolish.
But he did. Once inside, the man swipes about 20 pieces of expensive clothing off the racks, taking off with an armful of suit jackets, many worth more than $1,000 each.
Okay. So we just saw that video. Let's start with Gabe. Can you tell me, what do you think is going through a guy's mind that believes in God? He clearly is praying to God because he believes God can help him. And yet he goes right ahead and no one disagrees that God says you're not allowed to steal. If you believe that God exists and God says don't steal, why would you pray to him and then go ahead to do something that he told you not to do?
I believe that he was probably asking for forgiveness. I think that maybe he saw that he had no choice but to steal from a store, so he faced this contradiction. So that's why he was praying to God.
No, very good point, which let's clarify one point just at a time. I think to say someone has no choice but to steal, I think personally is wrong. Meaning when God says you're not allowed to steal, it includes even if someone else has a nice suit and you don't have that suit, you still don't have the right to steal. Use this example. A lot of people say, well, maybe the guy is really poor and he doesn't have what everybody else has. If this guy, let's say, earns $20,000 a year and he's driving an old car and he's living in a small apartment and he doesn't have the newest model of a refrigerator and everything else that all his neighbors have, and therefore he says, I need more. Is his happiness based on what he has, or does he look around him and decide, is he happy or not? If he would stay at exactly the same financial status that he is right now, and instead of him becoming richer, everybody else in the US became poorer than him. All of a sudden, everybody lost their houses. People were living in tents, no hot water, no electricity. People were riding horse and buggy. they didn't have any electronics, that person would all of a sudden become extremely happy and think of themselves as the wealthiest man in the US, which they are, even though their financial status hasn't changed. The only thing that changed was, what does everybody else have? And he's deciding his happiness based on, if everybody else is more than me, I'm not happy. If everybody else is less than me, even though I didn't change, that makes me excited. That's unfortunately a sad way of living, because we're not living for our own sake. We're living off other people's reactions, other people's lifestyle. And sometimes people have a certain thrill to find out when a celebrity or a friend failed in something, they did something that wasn't successful, they were caught doing something wrong, because it makes them feel a little bit better, like, oh, their life is not that good, and therefore I'm great, I'm okay. That's not living for the way we should be. It's living off other people's standard and deciding if I'm above or below. True happiness in life, for what a person needs, will never come from getting something that they don't have, because that never ends. Happiness will only come when you say, whatever I have is exactly what I need, and I have to make the best of it. Because you'll always have what you have, right? That's a simple logical conclusion, that you'll never not have what you have. You always have what you have. So if you say, I can be happy with what I have, you'll always be happy. If you say, I will not be happy until I have something, then you'll never be happy, because there always will be something new that you don't have. So that's just a separate point to clarify on the stealing aspect. But how is it that someone believes in God, and he's not asking for forgiveness as much as he's asking for success? As we see, let's pull up over here in the textbook. I'll have someone read. And Layla, if you'd like to read source 2 only.
Only your sins separate between you and your God.
Okay, and Sheila, if you'd like to read source 3, on the brink.
On the brink of breaking in, the chief cries out to God.
Yeah, the
Oh,
thief.
thief, I'm sorry, it says thief.
So the Talmud already discusses this phenomenon, and they call it here this dichotomy, this contradiction that we live with. We call out to God before we steal to say, God, make me successful. Well, God is not here to promote your thievery. God doesn't want you to steal. Why does that happen? Because of what Layla just read in source 2, our sins separate us with our true self. If you have a body that you keep very healthy, when you eat an unhealthy food, you eat a very sugary item, you start feeling sick inside. You feel your stomach doesn't handle it. You don't feel well. But if you eat tons of junk, you'll feel comfortable eating more junk, because not that it's okay to eat junk, but your body stopped feeling the effect that this has on it. Let's use a more extreme example. There are nations where people aren't so dressed. They wear basically no clothing. If they were to come to the US and say, why do you guys all wear clothing? Why don't you just walk around naked? It's completely fine. And they would tell us, you guys think it's a problem because you don't do it. And you guys have warped minds. You guys think negatively. You think about sin. So when you see someone dressed naked, it gets you all shocked and it gets you all puzzled and you don't know what to do. Just become comfortable with it. Why are you guys so corrupt in your minds to think that way? Just get natural with yourself, live the way you're supposed to live, and stop thinking so sinfully. What would we respond to such a person? Or Elia, what would you say to a person that says their only problem with no dress is in your mind, but really it's completely fine for people to walk around naked? You would agree? No. So I'll give you a food for thought. Tell me if you agree with this. For things like that, we would say it's wrong. And the fact that someone else doesn't feel it's a problem is not because it's right. It's because when you live so much a part of a certain way of life, you stop even feeling bad. You stop even seeing the issue with behaving in such a way. Some people get so caught up with their certain way of living life that even if they know what's right or wrong, they stop aligning their mind with their heart, and they start believing that the way they're doing certain things are correct. People that steal don't consider themselves bad. They always will justify it. They'll say, well, I only took a little bit. I only took from a big company that they can replace it. Because with our minds, we tend to try to justify the way we do things, but it's not because it's correct. It's because we're living so much within the bad that we stop seeing that is bad. As the prophet says, woe unto those that say for good, bad, and for bad, good. Sometimes we call things that are bad good and things that are good bad, not because that's really the way it is, but because we're so involved with it. It's like someone that lies the whole day. They'll tell someone else, why are you getting so caught up if I lie? It's okay to lie. It's not okay to lie, but because they do it so much, we start feeling like it's okay. We want to justify the way we behave. But that's because they're not aligned with the way they should be and the way they are. So a thief that's stealing, he knows that God exists and he knows that God says not to steal, but he has that block between his mind and his heart, his brain and his actions. So he knows certain things are wrong, but yet he does it because, like a person that doesn't eat healthy, they know it's not healthy, but they keep eating junk food and they say, well, it doesn't bother me anymore. It doesn't bother you not because you overcame it and it's not a problem, but because you're so caught up within this issue that you stop even feeling that it's a problem. We'll use back the example we gave last time of a satellite. How does a satellite work? Gabe, if you can give us a short view on how does a satellite work? We mentioned it last time in short.
It's a network. They're all connected to one another.
Yeah.
And they all communicate with one another, and they're all linked, basically.
Correct. So if I want to use my internet, my modem, router, Wi-Fi sends a signal to my satellite dish, which sends a signal to the satellite, which connects me to the provider's tools, which allow me to connect. Now, if my Wi-Fi, my router, my internet is not working, or I have a low signal on my phone, that means that I have to correct the signal. I have to strengthen it. I have to make sure that, number one, I'm paying my bill. Maybe they shut it off because I'm not paying my bill. Maybe my router or something got too dusty or was in water, or my satellite dish got covered with leaves or with a tree, and therefore it's blocking the view. So too, when it comes to our souls, we have signals between us and God. We have a soul in heaven, which is a part of our soul down on earth, but sometimes the connection gets weak. Like if you lose the signal, think of a guy that's driving down the road, he's in a remote place, and he lost the signal on his phone. This person still has a phone, and has a potential for signal, he's just not in the right place. So sometimes when a person has faith in God that doesn't implement in his life, it's because his signal is not strong, which means he's not aligned with his true beliefs of how the person wants to believe, the way they know they should behave, but they're having a hard time behaving. It's not that people do things that are wrong because they don't know. It's because it's not something that they worked on to become a first nature, that it's easy for them to do it. How many times we get upset and later on we say, I should have not gotten upset. Well, if you know you're not supposed to get angry, why did you get angry? And the answer is because I lost control at the time. I wasn't thinking straight. If we want to train ourselves to not get angry, using that as an example, we have to train ourselves and work on it with small things. Think of small things that happen to us. We dropped a cup on the floor and it spilled. We could either say something, a foul language, we can blame someone, we can get angry, or we could say, that's okay, it's not a big deal. When we train ourselves not to get angry on small things, it makes it easier to respond correctly on larger things. So too with our faith in God. If we enhance and water and grow the faith when it comes to small things in our lives, praying to God, thanking God, doing the commandments, then that strengthens that connection. It's like adding wires, adding rope to our connection between us and God. And then even if a small challenge comes our way and one rope gets snapped, if I had 100 ropes, one rope gets snapped, it won't change things a lot. But if I keep cutting away on the ropes, one after another, and by the time I'm left with 4, you snap another one, it's going to make a big difference, and it will stop the person from acting the way they want to behave. So it's sort of like we have an outer belief system and an inner belief system. An outer way that I want to behave, and then the way I actually behave. Our job is to connect the two as much as possible by doing the actions. by studying it, by starting to implement it whenever we can in order for it to actually be a part of our life. Someone that steals a lot, it started off from doing small things. They in the beginning stole a quarter from their brother when they were a little boy, and it kept growing bigger and bigger where they stopped seeing the issue with it. The good news is that with God, there's no such thing as you completely get cut off. As long as the person's alive, it's never too late for someone to reestablish that connection and start again. God has infinite mercy. With us, there's a certain amount of time someone can backstab me before I say, I don't even want to forgive you again. Don't bother me. You did it 10 times, 20 times, I lost my patience. God, thank our situation that God doesn't lose his patience. And he says, regardless, however many times someone did something wrong, I'm always willing to reestablish that connection. Let's read it inside. We'll pull up over here on the student book. And Sheila, if you'd like to read over here, B, fostering faith.
Faith must be internalized and constantly nurtured, like a craftsman who trains his and her hands. The mitzvah of, oops, I just lost it. I'm sorry. Okay.
Don't worry, you're holding.
Yeah, the mitzvah of involves deepening one's understanding and contemplation of that which one already instinctively knows. The more you think about it, the more real it becomes.
The more a person develops that connection, the more they'll actually feel it. The same works with our family members or our parents. The more someone does acts of kindness to their parents, respects them, says things to them, shows gratitude, the more they'll actually start feeling it. It's an endless downward spiral when we say, I won't do anything until I feel it. Imagine you came to the doctor and you said, you're telling me to take this medication. I don't want to take the medication until I know exactly how it works. Would you say that? Layla, would you say, I don't know all the ingredients over here. I need to go to medical school. I need to understand exactly how my body works. Would that be something logical? No.
No.
Why not? Why isn't that logical? Because we trust that this is the right thing to do. And I say, there is no problem with, if the doctor tells me, I never want you to research this, don't look it up, don't access it, then I say, wait, there's something he's hiding. If the doctor says, I have no problem, study all you want, but how about this? Start taking the medicine, and while you take the medicine, also enhance your knowledge. Same thing goes with God. God says, if you're going to wait till you understand everything and you don't do the actions, you don't foster the relationship, the connection, the belief in God, the following of what God wants, then you'll never feel it. You'll die before you have a chance to take the medication if you wait for 4 years of medical school. Instead, do the right thing, start acting the right way, and simultaneously also grow with your understanding of God and why we do things. Gabe, if you'd like to read over here, The Essential. This is from Tanya, which is a Hasidic book.
Essential thing is the mental training to habituate one's mind and thoughts continuously, that it ever remain fixed in his heart and his mind, that everything one sees with one's eyes, the heavens and earth and all that is therein, constitutes the outer garments of the King, the Holy One, blessed be he. In this way, he will constantly be aware of the inwardness and vitality. This is also implicit in the word emunah, faith, which is a term indicating training to which a person habituates himself, like a craftsman who trains his hand.
Very good. So a violinist got to continuously train playing that violin in order to be a good violinist. So too we, as humans, we got to train and continuously do the actions that we need to do to foster that connection with God if we want to have a strong connection. And Elia, if you'd like to read over here on page 32. However, you can read on the screen or in your book.
Yeah, I was just unmuting. However, Maimonides and his school of thought, who include belief in a mitzvah, their reasoning is that the mitzvah involves deepening one's understanding and contemplation of that which one already instinctively knows. And this action can be commanded, for even a truth that one already knows. If one does not think about it and contemplate it, if one's mind is completely distracted from the truth, then the knowledge of this truth is useless. And even if one does think about it, that is not sufficient. One must invest the intellect in deep thought about this truth, and then it will have an impact in one's character and personality. And regarding this, it states, know therefore this day and consider it in your heart.
Very good. So God says at the last line you read, know, and therefore you'll have it in your heart, which means God is telling us, so if I were to summarize with Sheila, is emunah a faith in God where it doesn't, I just either believe or don't believe, getting back to our first question, or is emunah a commandment that after I believe I have to do something? What would you say? Is faith in God something that either you believe or you don't believe? Or is God telling me that even after you believe, there is something that we have to do, which is to enhance that relationship?
I think the latter, that you have to keep continuing to do your thing, you know,
Right.
to
And
believe.
I'll give you guys a simple example. What would you say is a good way for someone to have a good marriage? What is a good ingredient for marriage? Most people would say love, right? Or let's hear Layla.
I was gonna say compromise.
So that's a compromise.
That's what my parents say.
Yeah, no, 100%. We assume that love is the answer for everything. If you just love someone and therefore you marry them, but you do not compromise, which means you're not willing to work on the love. Compromise means I'm willing to put aside and foster that love to be where I'm willing to put myself, my needs, my desires, my instincts for someone else. It's about lowering the ego, meaning if you ask two people, one guy will say marriage is the greatest gift. It's a saintly act that we can do. And another will say it's a terrible thing and they'll make fun and comedy about it. The reason why they have these two different approaches is because marriage breaks someone's ego. So if your main focus in life is your ego, then marriage is a terrible thing. But if your main focus in life is to elevate, become greater than your ego, not allow your ego to control how you behave, then you'll love marriage because marriage helps you and forces you to compromise and put yourself aside. So a marriage where someone doesn't put in work in order to compromise to be there for someone else won't last. A faith in God that doesn't have work being put into to foster that love and relationship with God, where we want to understand more, we want to talk to God, we want to hear what he likes, what he goes through, and God wants to hear from us. A spouse wants to hear what went through your hard day. How can I help? How can I be of assistance? Just tell me your challenges in an open way. If we foster that connection with God, it helps it last. If we don't, and we assume that it'll just be there because it was when we got married, it ends up going away. Going back to our slides, we have over here that innate faith in God. Let's hear, this is from Daniel Pearl, which we mentioned last time. He was a journalist, an American Jewish journalist that was in Pakistan and Iraq, in that region in the Middle East, covering some of the wars that were going on. And eventually he was captured and murdered because he was Jewish. So here we'll have a recording of his last words of what he said. Oh, I'm sorry. Let's go back there.
My name is Daniel Pearl. I'm a Jewish American. My mother's Jewish. My father's Jewish. I'm Jewish.
Daniel was not a religious person, but he was very proud to be a Jew. He loved tradition. He fasted on Yom Kippur and tried to make very great effort to come home on Passover to be with family. I do believe that Daniel was free when he said, I am Jewish. My mother is Jewish. My father is Jewish.
So what we have there, we see that a person innately, inside of him, just by who he is, regardless of what he did, believes in God. And it comes out at the last moment of a person's life when he was put to the challenge. But our job is not just to have it there as a backup, but also use it as a method to grow and become better. To use the love that we have in our relationship, not just to say, okay, we love each other and therefore there's no need to work on it. A great marriage is not one that they wait for a crisis to happen in order to enhance it, but they say, let's take the time when our marriage is great and make it even better. A good business is not one that waits for a challenge and a lack of cash flow to happen in order to fix it. They say when business is going real well, when we have extra money, let's have a reserve. Let's have a plan what to do when business won't go well. You'll probably all hear of WeWork. WeWork was a big company that they were subletting offices. They would rent out a large office space and they had contracts for 10, 20 years of a certain price, and they were renting it out with the intention of everybody keeping to pay rent and they have capacity. The problem with that business was they were spreading themselves too thin by hoping that everybody will continue renting office space. Of course, they didn't plan for a crisis like COVID to happen where people stop renting office space. They're going to work from home. And then you're stuck with large bills, but not enough income. So our faith in God has to be nourished in the sense that we should be able to withstand even a challenge. And we built up enough of a connection where it's not something that easily can falter. Let's ask Sterny, what would you say is the difference between commitment and loyalty? They're very similar, but just if you were to give an idea.
For some reason, loyalty sounds like more of a, like the person is more dear to you, maybe?
Yeah, that's true as well. So commitment, why do you have to commit to something, Sterny? Why can't I just do it without a commitment? What does it mean when I say I'm committing to this? What am I implying that without a commitment you wouldn't have?
That kind of like I'm forced to, like I'm committing to it because like in my heart maybe it's not like that won't be enough. Yeah. And maybe loyalty, it's like you automatically like just have this burning desire to.
So commitment, to clarify, which you were saying good, commitment means I'm committing even when it's hard. When I commit to something, I'm saying there's going to come a time when it won't be natural for me. It'll be difficult. It won't be smooth and easy. And that's what a commitment is. People that don't commit are saying, I will only do it when I'm interested. As soon as I'm not, I'm gone. A commitment means I'm giving my word that even if there will be a challenge, I will still go ahead. Loyalty is similar, but it's adding on when there is a temptation to do otherwise, I will still be loyal. Meaning, if you look at it at a couple, we'll use that as an example, a couple that stays married and they say, I want to be loyal to you, means that even if there's going to be someone else that's more tempting and there's a desire to go there, I am loyal to you and therefore I will not abandon you and I will not forsake our marriage because I'm very loyal. So committing is sort of when a person takes on a task and they say, even when it's hard, even when it's a struggle, it's not easy, it's not natural. And loyalty is also when there's a temptation to do otherwise. So in our own lives, emunah, faith in God, requires not just nourishing it, but it requires a commitment and loyalty. Commitment means even when it's hard. It comes a Shabbat, we're not interested in resting. Comes Yom Kippur, we're not interested in fasting. Comes a time when I'm hungry and I want to eat and I'm not supposed to eat now. And I say, I'm committed to this, which means I believe that this is right. I know that this is the best for me and it's hard. No one's going to convince me it's easy, but I am willing to do something that's hard because I have a desire to want to do the correct thing. Loyalty is also even when it gets harder and a person has a temptation to do something else. Everybody else is going to this restaurant and I know it's not kosher, or everybody else is celebrating or gossiping about someone, and I know it's inappropriate. I know I shouldn't be in this environment. I know I shouldn't be there, but I don't want to be out of it. I don't want to be a little bit different than the rest. That's where it takes loyalty to say, I am loyal to someone else. And therefore, even though it's tempting, I will stay a part of the correct side. I want to do the way things I believe should be done. We have one of the people that were tested and were, of course, had a great struggle with being loyal when it was hard. We'll see over here on page 35. And Gabe, if you'd like to read it to us. This is a story of Genesis, chapter 21. It's the story of the test of Abraham. God tested him 10 times, and this is the final test. This is a short synopsis of it. It doesn't have the whole story here.
And it came to pass after these things that God tested Abraham and said to him, Abraham, and he said, Behold, here I am. And he said, Take now your son, your only son Isaac, whom you love, and go to the land of Moriah, and offer him there for a burnt offering upon one of the mountains, which I will tell you. And Abraham rose up early in the morning and saddled his donkey, and took 2 of his assistants with him, and Isaac his son, and broke the wood for the burnt offering, and rose up, and went to the place of which God had told him.
Here we see the idea of someone having faith in God, where they're committed and loyal. Abraham loved his son. He waited 100 years to have a son. Finally, he gets a son, and God tells him, I want you to kill your son for me. Of course, it was just a test. God did not want human sacrifice. God wanted to bring out in Abraham his commitment and loyalty to God. But Abraham goes ahead and does it. What's going through his mind? Layla, can you think what's going through a guy's mind that you're constantly doing what God wants? You're telling everybody that God despises human sacrifice, and all of a sudden, God tells you, I want you to sacrifice your son. Why is he going ahead and doing it? Or what would you do?
Well, I mean, I think it makes him like really question his faith in God. But also, I have a quick thing. I have read that in the Hebrew, it says like Abraham tells his kind of servants who go with them to Har HaMoriah that like we'll be back. Like there's a we in there. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes, correct.
So I think like it definitely made him question his faith, but also Abraham seemed to know that it was just a test.
So actually the commentaries say it, you did point out something correct, that it's one of the scenarios where we say he prophesied, but not realizing that he was giving a prophecy. In Abraham's mind, he was just saying, we'll return. He didn't want to tell them what he's about to do because he was worried that people would try to stop him. But he gave a prophecy, and if he would listen to his own words, he would realize, but he didn't know, of course, that it was a test. If he knew, it wouldn't be a test. But what's going through someone's mind when they do that? So let's use this as an example. We have here, let me pull it up on the slide. This is a picture of Dr. Albert Schweitzer. He was a British doctor, had a great practice in the UK, and he decided that he wants to move to Gabon, Africa, which at the time was a French colony. And he sat there for many years helping patients. People were coming from all over in order to get help from him. Of course, this is Africa. People don't know anything. They weren't involved with medicine. This is in 1912, so over 100 years ago. This wasn't like today's day and age where everybody is helping Africa. He was going at a time that no one was there. Now imagine a patient comes to him from a faraway place. He knows he's not feeling well. This doctor gives a look at him and says, you have a serious illness and we must amputate your leg in order to keep you alive. Now, he doesn't have the time. He doesn't have the knowledge. He doesn't even have the right language. He doesn't speak what they speak in Gabon, Africa. He could barely communicate with the guy to let him know he has to take an amputation in order to save his life. Now, this guy in Africa has never heard of an amputation before, let alone a hospital, surgery. The only amputations he's seen are from dangerous drug dealers that hurt people that don't listen to them, or people that steal, they chop off their hands. That's the only thing he heard of. He never heard of it as a method of healing someone. do you think it would be blind faith or rational faith for someone to trust this doctor and say, you know, I don't really know what you're doing, and I don't know why you're doing this, but I know that I can trust you. You've helped so many people. You gave up. You've showed in the past that you are there to help, and therefore I trust you that it's the best for me. Elia, what would you say? If you were an African civilian, clueless about medicine, and someone tells you, a doctor that's helping so many people for years, he says, you need to do this, and you barely understand why, what would you do? God forbid with yourself, because we don't speak negatively about ourselves, but what do you think someone should do?
I mean, it depends on your situation. Obviously, I would be very skeptical but I would probably trust. I would trust because if you have nothing, like, what do you have to lose if it's
right?
I don't know. It depends on the situation, though. But
right, 100%. So most people would say it's not considered blind faith. It's not considered stupid to say this guy is out to do the best for me. I might not understand it, but that is something that I know is good. It's like your spouse. If you were trusting your spouse and with everything that they do, and they call you up emergency and they say, I need you to do something, you wouldn't question every time and say, well, it doesn't make sense to me. I don't think you should do it. If they say, I need you to do this and I cannot explain it to you, you would be happy to go ahead and do it, given if you have a good relationship with them where you can trust them. Of course, if there's a lack of trust, that wouldn't be the case. So with God, it's not just that we have to nurture the faith, but it's also understanding that we can trust him even when something doesn't make sense. Even when it's a little bit above or beyond our understanding, we can say, I am committed and loyal to this. And therefore, even though it's hard, it's against my intellect, against my understanding, I know that it's the right thing, not with understanding it, but having faith in the person that's commanding me. Think of it as there was a general training Marines to become the Green Berets, top of the line. He brings them at the top of the mountain after years of them training. And he says, guys, last test before we finalize that you're a part of the Green Berets, you got to jump off the mountain. So one guy gives a look down. He says, this is suicide. No way I'm doing this. That's it. I'm done. Next guy comes, a third guy. He says, you know what? If my general trained us for so long, I know how much he cares for us, how he pushes us to our limits for the best of us. He says to jump off, must be, it's doable. I know that he wouldn't put me through something that's not doable. And he jumps off, and sure enough, right after he jumps, he sees that there's a net beneath where they can be caught. The general says, I gotta only have soldiers that I can trust will do things and know that their general is in control and be able to follow what I command and not doubt every single command that was given. Now that's when it comes to humans, which would make sense if we would doubt if they really know what they're doing or not. Meaning even those that didn't pass the test, I can understand that maybe I would also be a part of them. But when it comes to God, when it comes to one that we know doesn't make mistakes, doesn't have a backup plan that might fail, he doesn't have a way of thinking that hasn't been proven before. We know that we can trust him blindly. Such a faith allows us to ease ourselves and say, I'm going to follow him even when it's going to be difficult. Let's move on to the next section. You have it on page 36, which is God concealing himself. And Elia, if you'd like to read D.
D. Why God conceals himself. God concealed himself in order for creation to exist. If God's existence was felt everywhere, there would be no space for existence.
Very good. So till now we were discussing how we believe in God, we have faith that God knows what he's doing, we want to follow him, even when it's hard, we got to foster that relationship. The obvious question is, if God wants us to do the right thing, make it so much easier. Why not God reveal himself? Where just as when I put my hand on fire, I feel the pain, God could have made it that we do a sin, we feel the pain. We do a good deed, we feel the reward right away. We get the check in our account instantly, we get paid for it. Wouldn't that be an amazing world where everything is seeable? We can see God, we can see why good things are good and bad things are bad. Why would God make a world where he's so concealed that people can do the craziest things and get away with it? Maybe that's why people have a doubt if God exists. How could such evil survive, and why would God not allow himself to be revealed? If God would make sins in the books where you got to study, you got to go to the library, make research, write up, then people would not sin as much. He could have made good deeds, commandments, positive things all over the place in front of our eyes. Anywhere we go, we're always doing good things. And sins would be something that we got to spend a lot of time. So to answer that question, why God would conceal himself, let's look at this slide, which you saw already the picture before. And Gabe, if you can read that and explain to me what's going on over here.
It's asking why people purchase special glasses for viewing solar eclipses, and from what I heard, it's because if you look at a solar eclipse with your eyes without glasses, it'll blind you because it's so bright, the light around the sun.
Correct. So they're doing it because they cannot look at the sun directly. The light is too strong that it will scorch the cells of the retina. And therefore, to protect their eyes, they need to have this type of covering. So too, when it comes with God, yes, God could have made the world where we see God clearly. Everything is open. But we wouldn't be the human beings that we would be. We would be destroyed, meaning we wouldn't be able to handle that great revelation. Just as by Mount Sinai, it says the people weren't able to handle God speaking to them, it would be too much of a revelation for someone to handle. So the sun is too bright. Think of it as God is too bright for us to be seen, for us to see it. But the question still comes, well, God created us in a way that the sunlight, that he is too bright for us. Why not God create us in a way that we can handle his presence? Just as angels handle God's presence, why not create us in a way that we can experience God without having to be worried about not existing? The answer for that is that ultimately God wants that the world should be a place where there's a challenge. Think of it as who do you want as a parent? I guess you guys have children. In another case, I would say, who do you want as a spouse? But who do you want as a parent? Do you want a robot or do you want physical parents? A robot, in theory, would be the ideal parents because whatever you tell them to do, they do it. They never scream at you. They never bother you. They never nag you. They never tell you what to do, when to do it. They don't come complaining. They're just serving you the way they should be perfectly. If anybody were willing to give up physical parents for robotic parents, or think of it as a marriage. Do you want to marry another spouse, another person, another human being, which has their hiccups, they have their things that they want, and they're always going to bother you at some point or another, versus a robot would be perfect. They would do exactly what you want, when you want it, never give you a challenge. Would anybody give up the human encounter for a robotic encounter? No, why not? Seemingly, it would make sense to give it up for something that's perfect. You would have a great experience. Every day you come home, you could tell them, compliment me. You could say, never tell me anything negative. I only want to hear great things about myself. Tell me how amazing I am. And the robot will tell you exactly what you want to hear, when you want to hear it. We don't like it because it's not real. I feel like it's something that they didn't choose to do. It's something that they're programmed to do. And I don't appreciate that. I want someone that is not me, is not being told by me what to do, but on their own, they choose to love me. They choose to want to have a relationship with me. That is what I love. That is what I desire. That's what I appreciate. Think of it as a painting versus a photograph. If I take a photograph of an area, a beautiful scene, it takes a moment to take the photo. How much does the photo sell for? Maybe 25 cents as a postcard, but that's about it. If a painter sits there for a few days and paints the same exact scene, how much is it worth? If he's a good painter, it could go for millions. Now, how does that make any sense? What's more accurate of the scene, the photo or the painter's work? Gabe, right? The photo is more accurate. The photo doesn't make any mistakes. Why do people pay millions for paintings and not nearly as much for photos? Gabe, what would you think?
It's that human touch to it. I think that we all we appreciate that aspect of a work that another person put their heart into it more so than we do for the accuracy alone.
Correct. We want something that a person had to work hard to do in order to make it happen, rather than something that came easy. We value something based on how much work went into it. God says, I can create a world where I'm seen, everything is perfect, everybody does the right thing, but I don't value the people's work because they'll be robots. They'll be like angels. They'll do exactly what's needed when it's needed, but it won't be with their own initiative. It won't be with their own desire. I want a world that people will do things because they chose to do it. That's what's more enjoyable. That's where we feel a greater connection. So let's continue over here on page 38. If so, who are we holding next? Layla, if you can read it, Imagine. Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry. Imagine you were able to spend a day with your favorite celebrity. Would your daily routine be different? Would you talk, eat, or relax differently than you did yesterday? If God's existence was obvious and blatant, we would all be robots, devoid of the ability to decide and make a choice about our commitment. We would lose our free will and the challenge of living up to our potential. God doesn't want us to be robots. He wants a real relationship with us. This idea will be explored in the coming lessons.
Okay, so that's what God desires, that he should be concealed. It's not a mistake that God is concealed. God wants to be concealed in order that we should be able to want to have a relationship with him when it's difficult. To have a relationship when it's easy doesn't take much. Let's see over here. You have a little, you'll catch on with the phrases that they're using in the video. It's not exactly your typical, but here you have on the bottom 4 different spiritual worlds according to Kabbalah. So it's explaining here the difference between God's creation from the different levels of the 4 worlds, how much of an existence or otherness other than God do we feel ourselves, and we are in the yellow one, that last one where it says near absolute otherness, and you'll see in the video the differences and how God shows specifically the way he wants us to be.
Look, Bible, Zadie made an instructional video for the Izifier.
Mazel tov! You've made a good choice by purchasing a Kabbalah Lab Izifier, providing hours of creative fun for the entire family. With this video, you'll learn how to Izify conscious Izicritters and create entire worlds. Start by choosing any of the topics below.
Otherness.
Otherness is the prime ingredient to any Izification. You see, all Izicritters are created using Kabbalah Lab's unique mind-to-creation interface. So when you Izify an Izicritter, it's really just an extension of your own mind. But you don't want just another extension of your own mind. You want a real Izicritter with its own mind, so it really feels it is. You want to give your Izicritter a sense of otherness. Your Kabbalah Lab Izifier is capable of generating infinite gradations of otherness over a spectrum of 4 distinct flavors. Flavor number 1, near zero otherness. Your Izicritter is just an obvious extension of yourself. It is and is, but it doesn't know that it is and is. Flavor number 2, proximal otherness. Your Izicritter feels it is something other than you, but it also feels how you are Izifying it at every moment. So its isness is swallowed up within your greater isness. Flavor number 3, relative otherness. Here, your Izicritter feels totally other, yet it can still acknowledge other others. including even your otherness. Flavor number 4, near absolute otherness. This is the ultimate is-a-quitter. It feels nothing else but its own isness. Well, almost. Real absolute otherness would be unsustainable. To exist, you see, a thing has to be able to receive from something other than itself.
I wonder what level of otherness we are at.
Okay, so what we have over here is specifically we're such an otherness from God that, as the video has at the end, we could even ask what type of otherness are we, meaning which level are we? We're so feeling that we're not seeing God that we can even doubt if God exists. And that's exactly the way God wanted it. He wanted humans that can assume they came from themselves, and yet they should choose to want to connect with God on their own. So he wanted to give us, his desire was to give us as much power in our hands so that we can discover the true reality on our own. So to answer this question, Elia, can you read the question and give us what you think is the answer based on what we said?
Why would God want creations to see themselves as separate entities from him? Well, I think he doesn't want, well, like also like what you just said about like he doesn't want humans to be like robots, but if we see ourselves separately from God, then we have someone or like something to like not look up to, but like it like motivates us to be our best self. And that's why like it's important that God, like you said, isn't isn't like visible or a person, and somebody or something that's like seeing over us and like is like caring for us. And then if we're part of God, then what, like, it doesn't really make sense. I don't know how to explain that, but
right. So we're a part of him, but he intentionally made it that we feel separate so we can choose what we want to do. Imagine you were forced to marry your spouse. How much love would you have for them? If you choose them, you say, wow, I chose this. I want to make it work. This is something I desire. God didn't want to force us to serve him because then we would be robots. He appreciates the artist. He appreciates someone that can make mistakes, that can choose to do the art or not do the art, works hard on it, and it doesn't come out perfect, but they desired to do it on their own. That's what's enjoyable for him. He wants humans that can choose good or bad. And he says, I want to make you thinking as a separate entity so you have free will to do as you please, and then you should make the right choice. Right? Think of it as parents and children. We don't want to be helicopters over our children and force them to do everything correctly because we're there. That would defeat the purpose, because we're not going to be with our children the rest of our lives. Parents usually pass away before the children do. You need to train your children that they should see themselves as they're existing by themselves, and they choose to want to do what the parents want them to do on their own. Let's watch this clip. You'll see over here where he brings out this point.
Dear Rabbi Moshe, I thought that keeping the mitzvah pledge I made at our last CteenU event would put me in God's good books. But now my phone was stolen, my best friend betrayed me, and I'm benched for the rest of the season. Why does God make it so hard for us to believe in him? His version of hidden kindness is hard to take.
Tell me, Zach, why do you think we can't see God?
He's invisible.
Like a ghost? So God is a physical being just being invisible?
No, God is spiritual, and since we're physical, we can't see him.
God created the spiritual and the physical. If he created both, then he himself is neither.
Well, if we can't see spiritual things like angels, how can we expect to see things beyond the spiritual?
Can you tell me what kind of phone I'm holding right now?
No.
Why not?
Because I can't see it.
Exactly. Your field of vision and this object are in two different places. Same goes with cell phone waves. Why can't we see them? because cell phone waves are not within the same space as your vision. As far as your eyes are concerned, those waves don't exist. But then why can't you see God? Isn't God everywhere?
He's everywhere, but God is not something you see. Seeing and God are way apart.
Zach, God is everywhere. He's in the heavens, and he's here on earth. He's in ideas. He's in emotions. He's in the ethereal world of the philosopher, the putrid world of the worker digging out the city sewers. And he's in the aroma of the garlic my wife is now sprinkling on the chickens for the TGI Shabbat dinner. None of this could exist if he were not there. He's everywhere, in everything. So he's certainly in your field of vision.
So why can't I see God?
The only reason you can't see God is because he doesn't want you to. We call him the hidden God because he is the only one who is truly hidden.
Like in Story Program when you told us that God isn't even mentioned, but he was pulling all the strings, kind of like the director behind the camera.
Exactly. God hides, but he is here even when he hides, and he is hidden even when he is here.
That's a lot to wrap my head around. Gonna think it through. Thanks, Rabbi Moshe.
No problem, Zach. I hope you feel better soon.
Yeah, seven truly everywhere. Up, down, right. Then all around, there, everywhere. Where he can be found.
Hey, Rachel. Got a question for you. If God is everywhere, why can't we see him?
Because he's hiding.
Next time, I'm just going to have to text you my questions instead of Rabbi.
So this video brings out a great point. If any of you ever watched the film, which I'll take it for granted that you have, do you see, Gabe, do you see the director of the film or the videographer?
No, not in the video.
Right. Would you say
Directly,
that,
no.
would you say that the director is the main person making this entire film?
I'd say so. The director, the writer, yeah.
Right.
But,
Now, wouldn't
okay.
you say that, doesn't it make sense that you don't see the main person? Like, why is he not in the film? Shouldn't he be the main one in every single part of the film? Like, see him in the corner or something, see him directing?
No, because that wouldn't, it wouldn't be like really a film. It'd break the illusion, if you just saw the director
Right.
in
So
being filmed.
would you say that he intentionally chooses to hide himself and not be seen in the film?
Yeah, exactly.
He wants you to experience the film. The film is not about the director, and that's why he doesn't show it on him. The film is about the actors, about the scene, the story, and that's why they're focusing on them. If God wanted this entire world to be about him, he would shine the light on him. He, as a director, would be the main person in the video, and he wouldn't even put us in here. He would ignore us. He intentionally hid himself because he said the world is not about me. The world is about the human being wanting to do the right thing. And I'm going to hide myself so we can spotlight them, even though I'm here the entire time. I'm behind the scenes and nothing will happen without me. He chooses to hide himself and not allow himself to be seen so we can be the main spotlight of the movie and we can decide what the script will be. We can decide how this film will play out as the actors, which appear to be the main ones of the film, but they're just fulfilling what the director wants them to do. So it would be foolish for them to say, who needs a director? We can do this film without him. Forget the videographer. Let's just play the acts and do whatever we want, and we'll have a great time. The problem is no film will come out if you don't have the director, but he wants it to appear that it's so real just on what the acting part is, which it is. That's his desire, that it should be just the actors being seen. God wants that he should be hidden, we should be revealed. We should have our existence as a given to us so we can choose how we want to behave on our own. So finishing off the key points, and with this we'll conclude, let's have each one of you read one of the points. Layla, if you could start with you. Read the first point.
Emunah is not just something you feel, it is something you actively do.
So that's the first point which we went through. Can you share just 2 cents of what you picked up from what we discussed in this class about if emunah, faith in God, is a commandment, or is the commandment already after you already believe?
It's kind of already after you believe, and it's like a continuous thing. Yeah, you're actively doing it. It's not like 1 second you believe. It's like to continue believing and to develop that relationship with God. You have to continue doing commandments and studying.
Right. Perfect. Great. Sheila, the second one.
Faith must be internalized, nurtured, and fostered.
Correct. So what, if you remember, we gave an example of someone that doesn't nurture and foster his faith. What does he look like? We had a video of him.
I don't remember.
No, we had a video of someone that
Oh, maybe I got the phone. My
steals-
phone rang. I left for a minute.
someone that steals from the store while he believes in
Oh,
God.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, because
Sorry.
the person, they didn't internalize their faith. They said, I believe in God, but my belief in God is not going to change the way I behave. That's
Could
because
I
when
just say something about that guy with that? I think that when somebody does that they are so self-centered that they think no matter what they pray to, that they think like God and everything is worried about them stealing. Do you know what I'm saying?
meaning you're saying
I
God is
mean,
not
if you're talking about the guy with the store, the store over here, well, over here because it's right by me. That store happens to be like 2 blocks away. But are you talking about that the guy that crossed himself and did that? When somebody does that, and I believe that they are so self-centered that they think because they believe in anything, or even when people win an award and they thank God because they won the award, like that's like who cares if you won a baseball game, or who cares if you won the Academy Award? I mean, there's a certain amount of self-centeredness that you think you're so important that the only thing that God is worried about if you win some music award.
right.
Or if you don't get caught breaking into a store, or breaking into a store.
Right.
I mean, what makes somebody so important that you should think that? Like, it doesn't matter about the people that he's stealing from, that their livelihood is hurt, but only that he should not get caught because he broke somebody's window and stole suits.
Right.
I don't know. That's a little.
Yeah. No.
That's a little above me.
You're right. Now we'll get to that point actually in next class about how much does God care about what we do, but definitely God doesn't want us to do negative things. God appreciates when we do good things, and God doesn't want us to do negative things. And this guy himself.
Rabbi, can I just say something? Because you're doing negative to the other person.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, if you say, okay, I won't get caught, but meanwhile, I stole from him. So what, does God not care about the other person that you're stealing suits from him?
Right. Of course, God doesn't want you to steal from him. And this guy made.
Exactly. So when somebody thinks like, oh, I'm going to nurture this, and look at that, I crossed myself, so therefore I could go steal a suit. I mean.
Right. So that's someone's missing the boat, where they think they're believing in God, but clearly it's not implemented.
No, it's their own self-centeredness.
Correct. Okay. Third point. Elliot, the third point. Yeah, unmute yourself.
Sorry, I don't know why I couldn't find the unmute button. Okay, having faith also means being faithful and committed to the truth. I think that kind of like what Layla said earlier, like you have to maintain your faith to God. You can't just say, okay, I believe in God, so whatever, he's going to protect me. Like you have to commit to like being a good person and doing your best to like maintain your faith to him. And like you can't just like say you believe in him and like you do, but then you're just like not doing anything about it. So
right, correct. And we added in 2 additional points regarding like commitment and loyalty. Do you remember what we said? What is that adding over someone that just believes in God?
So commitment. Well, I guess kind of like, what were we talking about? Commitment and loyalty in like regards to marriage, right?
Which the same goes for God. Faith includes a commitment and loyalty to God. So what would be the difference between someone that just believes in God or someone that says my belief in God also includes commitment and loyalty to God?
Yeah, so the difference is someone who's committed and loyal to God is someone who's going to keep being faithful to him and keep doing his best to like carry out his like commitment. But if someone who's just saying that I believe in God, the person's not necessarily like committed to believing in God. He just believes in God, but isn't carrying out his belief, which is like the most important part, because then you're actually showing that you're gonna commit to what God is telling you, or what, you know, so get in return. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, so you said it right. Just tell me also if this is what you meant, just to add in the additional words, the key words of even when it's hard and even when it's tempting to do otherwise. Commitment means that I'm giving myself over to do it even when it's not natural for me and it's not easy. Because someone that, besides for what Layla said, believing in God and implementing it, I could implement it only when it's easy, but when it gets hard, I say it's too annoying. That's where loyalty comes in and commitment, where I say, even when it's difficult, that's what I'm still, nevertheless, I'm going to do it. Yeah. Is that aligned with what you were trying to say?
Yeah. Like, so like that guy who was stealing from the store, he could have been like, I'm going to if he really believed, you know, in committing to God, he could have been like, I'm going to prioritize my commitment to God when God tells me not to steal. But instead, he's just said that, he just decided that he was going to hope that God protects him from being caught from stealing, which why would God do that? He literally says not to steal. So right. Yes, I agree with what you said.
Right. Right. Meaning this guy wasn't that committed to God. He was more committed to his own wallet than he was to God. Because commitment to God means that even though I don't have money, I still believe it's wrong to steal. He said, yeah, I believe in God, but my commitment to me, to my selfishness is more important, which means everything falls out of the way. When it's too hard for me to take care of myself, everything else falls aside. If it's too hard to follow God, then I just put God aside, but I'll never put myself aside. That's the difference. Are you committed to yourself or committed to God? Which means when you have a hard time to do what God wants, who do you follow? Which the same goes for a marriage. When you have a desire and your spouse has a desire, who do you follow? That shows, are you committed to yourself? Meaning, did you get married because you need someone to worship you and be there to serve you? Or did you get married so you can have a relationship with someone else, which means putting yourself aside for the sanctity and the greatness of the concept of marriage? So very good point on that. And on the last one, Stern, if you can read the fourth one.
Sure. God concealed himself in order for creation to exist. If God's existence was felt everywhere, there would be no room for existence. So like we said, that Hashem's greatness is so strong that just like the eclipse, we wouldn't be able to handle it. And then it would be so obvious that we would want to serve him. But the way we show true, like when we choose, it comes from our own self, and that means more to Hashem than just being robots.
Beautiful, beautiful. Hey, great. You guys did amazing. Thank you all for joining. With that, we'll conclude, and we will see you again next week. Any questions, feel free to reach out to me. Okay. All the best.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi. Bye.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Bye.